Welcome in everyone to Beyond the Beat with 32 Beat Writers. My name is Zach Hyduk, and today I'm here with Jacob Infante. He is a Bears blogger and lead NFL draft analyst over at the Windy City Gridiron. You can see his work featured on outlets such as Barstool, USA Today, NBC5 Chicago, News Nation, WGN, Bleacher Report, a whole heck of a lot more. I could keep going. So if you're looking for him on Twitter, you can see it over there underneath his name tag. Jacob, welcome back to the show, man.
No, I appreciate it, Zach. It's a good time to be a Bears fan right now. So it's definitely, appreciate the opportunity to to chat all things Bears, all things NFL, really. I mean, with the draft wrapping up, it's always always fun to look back and see how everything turned out.
Yeah, for sure. We talked with you a little bit. I don't remember if it was post Senior Bowl or pre. It must have been pre Senior Bowl because you gave me a couple of guys to look for while I was down there, which was really helpful, by the way. So thanks for that. And you got some really good information over to us at that point in time. But yeah, you guys had obviously two picks at the top of the draft here with Caleb Williams and Odunze. Those are the two guys really that kind of. You only had 5 picks, I think, with the Bears, and on offense you had 3. One of them was a tackle after that, but for the most part, the big additions there were Williams and Odunze. So I guess we'll just jump right into it. I oddly enough think that Caleb Williams was almost not talked about very much, at least in the circles that I listen to. And things that I watch. Obviously, it's been well known that he was going to be going to the Bears for a long time here. And I almost don't know if we know enough about him in some cases because everybody just assumed that was what was happening. So give us a little bit on okay, Fields is gone now. He's with the Steelers. What are you expecting? What can we actually expect Caleb Williams to bring to the table, and how is he going to change the Bears?
So I think with Caleb, you're looking at one of the top quarterback prospects to enter the draft in some time. One of the best pure passers, one of the best improvisers, one of the better running quarterbacks. But I think when you're looking at the arm talent, the accuracy, the vision, the creativity, I mentioned the accuracy, there's so much there with him. And that's not to say he's a perfect prospect, because I don't think he is, but I think in Chicago specifically, you're getting an upgrade as a passer. You're getting someone who's going to get the ball out quicker, who's shown that if you put him in structure a bit more, he's going to be able to get the ball out quickly, and he's going to be efficient in doing so. And, if things fall apart, which I don't know exactly how much they will with how good the Bears receivers are now, maybe if the offensive line doesn't hold up necessarily, then he's capable of extending the play. He's capable of, scrambling, extending the play with his feet, and being able to identify an open man outside of structure. So I think that he's going to be someone. There are going to be some issues, I think. Fumbling is definitely something that's going to need to be cut back on, at least compared to his time at USC. Just the ball security when, he's scrambling, when he's running the ball, when he's standing in the pocket and he senses pressure coming in. I think that's something that's going to need to improve if he is going to be one of those top elite quarterbacks in the league. And then there are sometimes, he can play some hero ball. And I think that some of that comes down to USC's receivers didn't get open very often. The offensive line wasn't very good. And he simply had to play hero ball. And sometimes it worked. But, again, with such a low percentage opportunity, there are going to be some times where, all right, he's going to make an errant throw. Sometimes he's going to take a sack. Sometimes he's going to make some questionable decisions. So I think that he likes to color outside the lines a little bit too much,
Mm.
and there's definitely a lot to like of him outside of structure. But if he can hone that in just a little bit more, I think that's going to suit him very well at the next level. So, in theory, it should be an upgrade at quarterback for the Bears, a better passer, a more accurate passer, which I think is a huge thing. And with the offense the Bears have around him, I mean, I think the ceiling's pretty high. Not, I mean, obviously, long term is what you're looking at with Caleb, but
Mm.
and as a rookie, I think the ceiling is higher than anybody the Bears have ever brought in. Anybody they've drafted in the last several years.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, you have everybody on Twitter trying to clown all the Bears fans about a 4,000-yard passer and whatnot. But now that's pretty tired. But maybe you got a guy who can do that here. That'd be a pretty big, expectation for year one. But obviously, it makes sense to be excited here. And the difference between him and Justin Fields, I think, is going to be pretty massive. I'm curious to see how the transition between those two guys happens for the players that are kind of still on the roster there. But especially now, I was just looking a little bit at the coaching staff. You guys have offensive coordinator Shane Waldron there. He was with the Rams and the Seahawks for several years before coming to the Bears this year. And then now you have one thing I thought was really interesting is the passing game coordinator is Thomas Brown, who was with the Panthers for a brief bit
Yeah.
last year, and their offensive coordinator for Bryce Young. So how much do you trust the coaching staff to handle this whole transition between Justin Fields and Caleb Williams? And obviously these guys are new. So how does that work out?
I feel like for the most part, it should be a smooth one. And when you're looking at some of the top offensive play callers in the NFL in 2023, I think that most of the top guys either were NFL head coaches when they were calling those plays, or they got NFL head coaching looks, or were straight up hired for other opportunities. I think there's some like Ben Johnson with the Lions, Bobby Slowick with the Texans, where they got looked at, but they ultimately decided to stay where they were. I think
Mm.
out of the options that the Bears had to hire a new proven offensive coordinator, Waldron was the best one by far. So I think he's someone that, okay, maybe he would have been, say if the Bears did fire Matt Eberflus, he would have been a head coaching candidate I would have been all right with. But as an
Mm.
offensive coordinator, where you're keeping Eberflus, you're keeping some of the momentum that they had later on in the year, and you're adding all this talent. I mean, I think that Waldron's, in theory, should be a massive upgrade over Luke Getsy. And as far as like a DJ Moore or Cole Kmet, I don't think their roles are necessarily going to change too much as opposed to, how things were under Luke Getsy. I mean, realistically, DJ Moore is who he is. He's going to be productive no matter what, I feel like. And the offensive line is going to be a little bit interesting because I feel like that this offensive line, at least historically, uh, tends to target, I guess, a little bit heavier offensive lineman compared to what you saw with Luke Getsy. And, the athleticism is obviously still there, but you have guys
Mm.
like Tevin Jenkins, you have guys like Darnell Wright, some of those mauler types, they're deceptively athletic, but at the same time, I think that they're going to fare pretty well specifically making the change to this new offensive system. So I think things should go well. I do. I guess the one thing that I'm a little bit uh, questionable on is, a lot of Seahawks fans coming out weren't super happy with the use of Jackson Smith and Jigba in Seattle.
Mm.
Uh, you know, Relatively heavier on screens or not so creative in terms of the route concepts he ran. I'm going to be curious to see if that applies to Roma Dunze and as a rookie as well. I hope it doesn't, but from a pure target perspective, I mean, Seattle did a good job of spreading the ball around to all three of those guys. So when you factor in Komet, you factor in DeAndre Swift, you factor in Gerald Everett now, you've got a lot of mouths to feed.
Mhm.
So I guess the main question is how are you going to distribute the ball? And are you going to make smart decisions with that?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we'll stick on the wide receivers. You brought up the running game, and we'll definitely get to that as well here. Let me just move that there. So yeah, with the wide receivers, so you mentioned Odunze, obviously, and that's I mean, I was really excited for the guy. I'm not anywhere near the film study that you are, but I know that he was rated pretty highly on your board. I think you said you had him like your fourth player overall.
Yeah.
And I believe the day he was drafted, you said something about if he's as good as you think he is, they now have three number ones. And they brought in Keenan Allen. It was interesting because I think Williams was working out with Keenan Allen at the pro day or something like that. That was pretty fun to see. So you've got Keenan Allen, you've got DJ Moore, and you've got Rome Odunze. So how is that going to work? Like, who's going to be on the field in two wide receiver sets, or are they going to run a bunch of three wide receiver sets? What do you see these guys roll as now that there's three number ones, as you say?
So I feel like if you're running just two receiver sets, it's probably going to be Moore and Keenan.
Okay.
And I think that, Odunze is going to factor into that somewhat, especially if you want to have two traditional outside receivers. Keenan Allen doing a lot of his damage out of the slot mostly. Uh, but I think that you stick with your two best receivers, or your two proven receivers, I should say, in Moore and Allen. But I do think that it's not going to be a massive issue just because his Seattle's run a decent amount of 11 personnel where you're having three receivers out on the field. I know some people get worried where they hear that, oh, Seattle likes to run a little bit more 12 personnel. They like to have two tight end sets. That doesn't mean that they run exclusively two tight end sets. It's
Hmm.
still an 11 personnel heavy league. It's still an 11 personnel heavy offense. And I think that you're still going to see a good amount of Roma Dunze. You're still going to see a good amount of all three receivers. I think that, I mean, obviously you'll see Komet paired up with Gerald Everett too. But I think a majority of that's going to be in the 11 personnel. Now, as for the targets, that's what I'm going to be interested in finding
Hmm.
out, because Caleb Williams doesn't have proven on-field chemistry with any of these receivers yet. It's not like Justin Fields where, he favored DJ Moore heavily, and now you're bringing in Keenan Allen. Now you're bringing Rome Odunze in. And it's like, oh, how's he going to click with these guys compared to how he clicked with DJ Moore? You're starting from scratch on that. So
Yeah.
obviously you mentioned Caleb's thrown to Keenan at the pro day. They had a workout even before the Bears drafted either of those two rookies. The three receivers and Caleb all worked out together. So
Hmm.
obviously there's some sort of chemistry there, have a little bit of an advantage, so to speak, over a lot of other rookies, a lot of rookie receivers entering the game, a lot of rookie quarterbacks entering with proven receivers. But uh, target distribution, I don't know. I expect it's going to be heavy on the first two receivers. Then I'd guess Cole, then Odunze. But I still think you'll see a lot of Odunze because I think it's going to be pretty heavy 11 personnel.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting that you mention it because they extended Komet, I think. Was it last year that they gave him an extension? And how long was that for again? He'll be around for a while, right?
Yeah, I want to say it was 3 or 4 years. I don't know exactly how many,
Yeah.
but it should be 4 years seems right, but don't quote me on that.
Yeah, I should have had it up because that was something that I remembered last year. Everybody was like, "Whoa," because it was pretty. I think it was pretty big and a fairly decent length as well. So he'll be around for a while. And I guess speaking contracts and pass catchers, I believe that DJ Moore is up on his final year. And Keenan Allen, I think they restructured or gave him a new deal. So that's like a 1 to 2 year thing as well. So obviously, that's probably not really a fair question to necessarily pose at this moment in time, but if you had to guess as of right now, would you say that both of those guys are on the team next year or just one of them? What do you think there?
Yeah, so as of right now, the Bears still have a bit of flexibility with DJ Moore specifically. So he has 2 more years under contract, and Keenan has one. So that's going to be interesting to see if they choose to extend Keenan Allen. By all accounts, it sounded like he was going to play out the rest of his year this coming season. as an impending free agent. So I think Chicago, you make the trade, you give up an early fourth round pick. I feel like you're going to want to
Yeah.
keep Keenan Allen, even if it's just on a 1 or 2 year deal. And I feel like Chicago's smart to the point where they say, all right, Keenan Allen's over 30 years old. He's still playing at a very high level, but is that sustainable? You don't want to give him a 4 year deal and not give him an out until year four or something like that. I mean, you need to be safe. You need to be smart with your money. But at the same time, if they can get a reasonable deal done, if it pays it's going to pay a good amount of money with how good Keenan Allen
Yeah.
is. But if they can get him on like a 2 year deal, I think they'd be very happy with that. I know I'd be very happy with that. And I think DJ Moore, unless his play falls off a cliff with the new guys they're bringing in, then I think it's pretty safe to say Chicago's going to make it a priority to extend him. So they've still got time on that. They've still got him on what's realistically a very good value deal compared to what the receiver market is, like what it looks like right now. But I
Sure.
do think they'll extend him, barring something unforeseen where his play absolutely drops off. But judging just off his first year in Chicago, I mean, there's no reason you shouldn't work for an extension with him.
Yeah, I wonder if they do that this year or not. I was at and everybody who's listening has probably heard me mention this too many times. I was at the Thursday night game against Washington, and that was just brutal. I'm not a Washington fan, but I was there with a friend of mine for his birthday, and that was like 230 yards and three
Oh,
touchdowns. It was just it was bad. It was great for him. But after, a lot of his production came in a couple of games, and now that you don't have the rushing upside that Fields did, but you have a much better, in theory, a much better passer. I'm really curious to see if he can hit those marks again. And I think he hit 1,400 yards. And so I'll be interested to see how that plays out. And I know a lot of fantasy players will be too. So, um, I mentioned Justin Fields in the rushing there. We had three guys in the backfield last year. Looks like we might have three there again.
yeah.
Deonta Foreman left the team, or I don't remember the situation as to it's his departure if he's a free agent. But
Right.
DeAndre Swift was brought in. You still have Khalil Herbert and sophomore Roshan Johnson. How's that going to shake out? Because last year when we talked, we were kind of thinking that Roshan maybe would get some opportunities later towards the back end of the year. And so give us a snapshot of maybe where we ended the year with the running backs and now where we're at.
Yeah, so I think Deontay Foreman, there were some he was a free agent on a 1 year deal, and I feel like he felt that obviously when there was injury around him at the running back position, he performed very well. But once the guys came back, they stuck with those guys and didn't really give him a chance. So I didn't think it was likely he'd come back regardless. DeAndre Swift is going to be the bell cow back. I feel pretty confident that you're not signing a running back, especially with today's day and age. You're not signing a running back to considerable amount of money if you don't think he's going to be the main guy. And Khalil Herbert's going to contribute to some extent.
Mhm.
Uh, I'm curious as to how Roshan's going to contribute. I think just from a pure fantasy perspective, I wouldn't
Mhm.
invest really in Roshan this year. If you have like a taxi squad slot, then I'd do that. But uh, the path is going to be pretty rough for him to get consistent usage unless guys go down ahead of him. But this should be Swift's running back position. This should be his starting role. And I anticipate that not only that, but he's going to contribute a decent amount uh, on passing downs too. So, him
Yeah.
proving that he's been able to, uh, you know, catch at a pretty high level, both at Georgia, in Detroit, his time in Philly too. He's a pretty solid receiving back. Uh, and I want to bring up from a rushing perspective at quarterback too. I mean, obviously, uh, Justin Fields being one of the top rushing quarterbacks in the league right now, you don't have that anymore. And
Right.
I still think Caleb Williams is going to enter the league as a very good rushing quarterback. I mean, if you top 300 rushing yards, you're still going to be top 10 in the league in quarterback rushing yards. And I think that's something Caleb can pretty easily do. I mean, that's That's less than 20 rushing yards a game if you play all 20
Right.
games, which Caleb's certainly athletic enough to do that. He's creative enough to do that. It's just a matter of if he's going to choose to take off running rather than throwing the ball in some of those instances. But I think he can definitely do that. He's still going to provide some sort of value running the ball more so than the average quarterback, I think. Not going to be like a Justin Fields in 2022 where he's getting over 1,000 yards, but he'll more than hold his own there. But as for the running backs, I mean, DeAndre Swift is a guy that I target pretty heavily. Khalil Herbert will be a valuable backup option, just someone to keep safe on the bench. And then Roshan, I'm going to be interested because I liked what I saw from him at Texas, but his rookie year wasn't all that great. Now he's,
Mhm.
a third string running back, and they're one of the starters ahead of him. Just got a pretty big deal. I don't think he's going to see a ton of playing time on offense. So we'll see. I mean, maybe it'll be a Deontay Foreman situation. He won't play a ton, but whenever he does, he's very efficient. Uh,
Mhm.
I don't know. Time will tell on that.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people disappointed about that, but that's the way the ball bounces sometimes.
Yeah.
So, um, I don't wanna get too negative because I think in general, we're all pretty excited here, but if this doesn't work or if it's challenging, not maybe if it doesn't work, if it's challenging, what are the causes of those challenges for this offense?
Yeah. So I think part of it would come down to the offensive line, right? And you're looking at the unit right now. I think they got better, not significantly. I think they got deeper in terms of the backups that you're bringing in. Where injuries are going to happen on the offensive line. It's just a nature of the game. And if someone goes down, you have Karan Amagaji, the third rounder out of Yale, who's a massive upgrade as a backup. He can play guard, he can play tackle, and I think he's a future starter for Chicago's offensive line. You're bringing in whichever one of Coleman Shelton or Ryan Bates doesn't win the starting center job, you still have a quality backup who can be a decent starter, uh, as a depth option.
Mm,
So, and in theory, whoever wins that starting job should be an upgrade over Lucas Patrick, over Cody Whitehair over the last couple of years, guys who have been, quite frankly, not good as starters
mm,
at the center position. So, all that said, though, they don't have a star on the offensive line yet. They don't have a superstar player up front. Braxton Jones is a solid starter. He's still young. There's still plenty of room for him to grow. Year 3 will be big for him to see if he can take that next step and prove himself that he can be a franchise left tackle. Because as of now, I don't think he is. He certainly surpassed expectations as a fifth round rookie out of an FCS school, stepping in right away, being a solid starter. And there's value in having a pretty good left tackle on a cheap deal. But
yeah,
if you think you can do better than him, then that's something you have to consider. Tevin Jenkins has probably been their best offensive lineman when he's healthy, but he's struggled with injuries the course of his career. Nate Davis, for some reasons in his control, some reasons out of his control, uh, didn't have the first year in Chicago that many expected him to. If he doesn't succeed in year 2, there's a realistic out in his contract next offseason. He could be gone. And then Darnell Wright, I think that's the promising one. I think he's got the highest ceiling of the bunch on the offensive line right now. Solid, all things considered, as a rookie starter. Obviously, any offensive tackle is going to have some ups and downs, but the promise was there. So, still a decent amount of question marks with the offensive line. I'm not sold that it's a fixed unit entirely. I think there still might be some struggles. It'll be better, and I think you saw down the stretch last year that it got better, but I just feel like for a rookie quarterback, maybe they could have done a little bit more for the offensive line,
mm,
spent a little more money on a center rather than, all right, Coleman Shelton, who's had one season as an average starter, and Ryan Bates, who's had one season as an average starter and has been a backup every other year. Those being the guys you're relying at center. I don't know, but I think the offensive line would be a part of it. And, in turn, if the offensive line doesn't do all that well, Caleb Williams might have some development issues in terms of how he handles pressure because he didn't grade all that well from a PFF perspective in terms of how he handled pressure, his throwing ability, his issues with fumbling the ball. So that's what I'm looking for is the offensive line, how that's going to affect Caleb too. So, and I say that as someone who's a very big fan of Caleb, obviously, but I think how he performed under pressure was a little bit of a weakness of his. So if the offensive line doesn't hold up, then is he going to be able to spot the open man? Is he going to be able to trust his receivers enough to get the ball out on time? And I think that's something where things could fall apart. On paper, this is a way better offense than they've had the last
Mm.
couple of years, but I still wouldn't say it's perfect necessarily. I wouldn't say it's an elite unit on paper just yet.
Yeah, hopefully maybe the receivers help out with that as well. And I know one of the issues that Justin Fields really faced was just taking sacks all the time. And so hopefully, even if he does face that pressure, he's able to handle it a little bit better, even if you said he has some things to improve on there. So
Yeah.
um well, I did want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about something other than the Bears because we did talk to you, as I mentioned at the top of the show, about prospects and the Senior Bowl, and you gave me some guys there.
Yeah.
Is there anybody that didn't end up going to the Bears, but that you liked, or maybe they're a little bit deeper or whatever, but like a receiver or running back, a tight end or quarterback or something that went somewhere you felt like was a pretty decent landing spot? Maybe give us some insight on that.
Yeah, so one guy in particular that I think landed in a pretty good spot is Kamani Vidal, the
Mm.
running back out of Troy who ended up getting drafted late by the Chargers. I think that was a very good landing spot for him. And I thought he was someone he can be I thought he could be a solid backup, but now you give him realistically a somewhat clear path to start. I mean, you have Gus Edwards, he's solid. He's not a star, but he's solid. J.K. Dobbins, who again has been very good when healthy, but he always gets hurt. So you
Right.
can't.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trust him to be a starter in the NFL right now. So you have a little bit of a path for him to succeed. And you get a guy like Vidal who's low to the ground. You get someone who's stout, someone with a pretty good contact balance, who's fast, who's quick. And I think there's an opportunity that he steps into something at the next level. And maybe Gus Edwards goes down one week, and then maybe J.K. Dobbins gets hurt for the millionth time, and then you're looking at Vidal as the top guy there. I think he's someone who can contribute at a high level there. Uh, I'd have to think some other guys. I'm interested in seeing how they perform. I think the Eagles with Johnny Wilson is something that I'm going to be interested in seeing too, because the
Mm.
Eagles, for as good as the AJ Brown Devontae Smith tandem is at receiver, and granted, they've never really needed to have a great wide receiver three, but they haven't. I mean, Quez Watkins was solid 2 years ago. Last year, he was hurt a decent amount. Now he's not on the team. You bring in Devontae Parker, whose best days are behind him. I mean, that's your wide receiver three right now. I think Johnny Wilson, whether you have him as a receiver, I mean, that's what he's listed as. Uh,
Mm.
Obviously, there are drop issues with him as a separator. I don't really know what to expect, but you have a guy who's over 6'6". He's over 230 pounds, runs a low 4.5 in
Yeah.
the 40-yard dash. That's a pretty impressive athlete you're working with there. So I think that you give him the chance to slowly ease into a role in the Eagles offense. And with how many other weapons that Philadelphia has with those two receivers, with Dallas Goedert, with Saquon Barkley now out of the backfield, that's going to take a lot of pressure and a lot of eyes off of Johnny Wilson when he does play. And I think that he's got very good red zone potential. And
Mm.
I'd argue that, the Eagles, they ended up with JJ Arcega-Whiteside. That obviously didn't work out, but I think you're looking at Wilson as he's bigger, he's faster, he has better ball skills. And I think that could separate him from, Arcega-Whiteside as somebody who couldn't get open at the NFL level. So
Mm.
with the open wide receiver three spot, I think Wilson probably won't get it right away, but I think there's going to be a chance for him to, whether that's now or sometime down the line. And another one that I'm going to be interested in is For one, I just want to say I feel bad for Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis. On Brees
Yes.
Hall, like, those are 2 very talented guys, and, I don't think there's gonna be a great opportunity for playing time for either of those guys out of the gate, but I'll go Luke McCaffrey as the other one, 3rd,
Hmm.
late I think he was the last 3rd round pick ending up with the Washington Commanders. He
Mhm.
was someone I had a high grade on, especially compared to the consensus. You're looking at what the Commanders have a wide receiver right now. Obviously, Terry McLaurin's playing at a very high level, has for some time. But other than that, there's some questions. I mean, Jahan Dodson didn't have the year 2 that some expected him to. I mean, he seems like a solid starter, but he doesn't seem like anybody who's going to light the world on fire. Outside of that, you're looking at, De'Ami Brown, Olamide Zaccheaus, Dax Milne, Jamison Crowder, so decent, guys who should make the team and see some playing time. But I think Luke McCaffrey has a good chance to be the wide receiver 3 in Washington. And I think that you bring in a rookie receiver at the same time as a rookie quarterback, like what they have with
Mm.
Jaden Daniels now. You have a chance for 2 young guys to really grow and build chemistry together. And I'd argue that McCaffrey has the chance to outperform Jahan Dodson in 2024.
Mm.
And whether or not that happens, we'll see. But I'm not sold on Dotson right now as somebody who's going to contribute at a high level. I think Luke McCaffrey could be that guy. There are still some questions with him being, still relatively new to playing receiver full time. But for somebody who's newer to the position, the football IQ, the route ability, the ability to separate, the ability to exploit zone coverage as consistently as he does, along
Mm.
with the ball skills, along with the athleticism. There's a lot to like there. So Luke McCaffrey is someone too. I'm going to be interested in seeing what he does in Washington. Maybe more of a year 2 type of guy, but I still think he contributes this season for the Commanders.
Yeah, I got a chance to talk to him, which was interesting, and then I also got a chance at the Senior Bowl to talk to this last guy I'll ask you about here, but it went late. You turned me on to him a little bit. Maybe I got a little overexcited. I don't know, but Ryan Flournoy ended
Hmm.
up wide receiver going to the Cowboys in the 6th round. Am I crazy to have any hopes that he might be able to do something down there with the Cowboys?
I mean, I don't think it's impossible. I mean, because Dallas, obviously, CeeDee Lamb's a superstar, right? He's going to be the wide receiver 1 as long as he's healthy.
Hmm.
And you have Brandon Cooks, realistically, uh, his best is behind him. He's still a good starter, that's for sure. And I think that, you get him out there, he's still going to be a pretty reliable contributor for you, but he's not going to be a wide receiver 1 type of guy anymore like he used to be earlier on in his career. That and then Jalen Tolbert. I mean, that's your wide receiver 3 right now. Still got a lot to prove there. I think the I think the ceiling or I guess the obstacle that Ryan Flournoy has to pass is going to be pretty high for him right out of the gate, but the tools are really there. The tools are there, and I think you have CeeDee Lamb, you have Jake Ferguson there at tight end. They're going to take a decent amount of the opportunities, and you have someone like Ryan Flournoy who's tall, who's fast, who's strong. Just let him go on go routes, honestly, and then let Dak Prescott throw it up to him. I think he can carve out a nice niche for himself in Dallas's offense. So time will tell if he does. I mean, being a 6th round pick, I can't put the expectations insanely high,
Sure.
but I'm interested in seeing what he can do because the upside's certainly there. And I think he's a hell of a football player. So to be able to get him in round 6, take a flyer on him for a team that doesn't have really a long-term answer at receiver outside of CeeDee Lamb. I think
Hmm.
taking a guy on tools like that's definitely worth a shot.
Yeah, maybe in a best ball league, maybe you get something every once in a while from him. That'd be interesting to see. So, well, thanks for joining us. If you are trying to pay attention to the Bears here and the tweets coming through our feed, anyways, and from Jacob as well, they got mini camp coming up, I believe, this Friday, which is the 10th, and then they've got for the rookies, that is, and then mandatory mini camp. They're starting a little earlier than everybody else, I think, on the 4th. So, Jacob, before I let you go, though, remind us where we can find you.
No, absolutely. I mean, you guys can follow me on Twitter at the handle underneath my name there. So Jacob Infante 24. You can find my written articles over at Windy City Gridiron. So that's going to be a lot of draft recap, stuff like that, prepping for the 2025 draft already. So I'm excited for that. We have a pretty fun project coming up on staff where me and a handful of other guys were putting together like a fantasy draft of 21st century Bears. So anybody after the year 2000, we're putting together a team and assembling, the best of the best. And, we're comparing who gets the best team out of all that. So make sure to stay tuned for that. That's probably not going to come out for like another month or so, but we're going through all the picks right now, and it's been fun already. So I'm happy with the picks that I've gotten in the first, I think 5 rounds or so we've got through today. So yeah, stay tuned for that. But otherwise, I appreciate you having me on, Zach, and I'm excited to see how this year turns out.
Yeah, us too. Maybe we'll hit you up sometime partway through the season or something. So thank you
Absolutely.
again for joining us. And thanks to all you guys for listening as well and watching now. Remember to check Jacob out on Twitter, like he mentioned, at that handle underneath his name, and over at the Windy City Gridiron. Don't forget to check out our website, 32beatwriters.com. Use that code down below. Podcast will get you 50% off of our premium subscription. For Jacob Infante, I'm Zach Haiduk. We'll see you later.